March 1st, 2023 was the day I started a new professional chapter for myself, as the mall reporter was no more, but it was now instead the Multiverse of Color, now dedicated to all things pop culture, from the largest movies, TV shows, video games, comics, to the most independent stories that are out there. And there's a reason why I'm doing this on this 1 year anniversary, because Multiverse of Color was just the beginning of where I'm wanting to take this website to, which is why I'm proud to announce the Showrunner Whisperer. Hello and welcome to the Showrunner Whisperer. For anyone who is new to this voice, hi, I'm Andy Behbakht. Good to meet you. Good to see you. And to anyone who's heard me before on my various podcasting adventures, what's up? Welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. This is a special day, as this is dropping on March 1st, 2024, a whole year later after the Multiverse of Color was finally launched, and it has opened up so many new opportunities, and this is going to be one of those opportunities. For anyone who doesn't know me, like I said, my name is Andy Behbakht. You can call me Andy B if that's easier, or just Andy. I'm good with either one, and I am an entertainment journalist. You can find my work over at ScreenRant.com, where I'm a senior writer and interviewer for them. I'm also the editor-in-chief and creator of Multiverse of Color. And for most of you who probably have heard me before and who are hearing me today, I am also the host of the Flash podcast, which, as you can hear in its name, was all about the Flash TV show. Also, of course, the Flash in various other media. I'm really excited to start this and to get a little bit into what this little thing became. I'm going to take you back to August 2022. This was very shortly before the world found out that the Flash Season 9 was going to be its final season. Now, I had heard already a little bit in advance that Season 9 was going to be the last one. So for me, there was a little bit of mental preparation already. But as I came to get into the whole idea that, okay, this is Flash's final season, the Flash podcast will obviously exist in one way or the other afterwards. But where do I want to go next as a podcaster, as a critic, as a journalist? Something that is very important to know about me, for those who are hearing my voice for the first time, is that I love television. That is my favorite medium of storytelling. Yes, of course, I love movies. I love comic books, regular books, even though I don't read as many of them anymore because I'm boring. Television is my safe space. Television is where I go to properly escape the real world and just fall in love with characters and stories and universes. And I knew deep inside that I have more to give as a podcaster and as a content creator. So I started to figure out, what should I do next? Do I want to cover another TV show on a weekly basis? Not really. I've done that now for 10 years. I'm honored to have done it through the Flash TV show and all the connections and opportunity that has opened up for me, because the Flash really took my career in a whole new level that I was not prepared for as a young 20-something-year-old dude when I first started it back in 2013. So I tried to think, okay, what have I accomplished over my time as a journalist? Because I started writing online when I was only 17 years old, and I'm 30 years old now. So, you all do the math. But I try to think, what have I learned, and what could I do? What could I do next? What is a new challenge? What is a new opportunity that I could do and explore? So I wanted to also just add into context that during these last couple of years, the pandemic has obviously been a huge, huge change to our world in so many ways, but also in this industry, because before this, I didn't get to do a lot of interviews on a regular basis. It was usually when I went to San Diego Comic-Con or WonderCon, and the occasional phoners that I would get to do. But with the pandemic making Comic-Con impossible the first 2 years of the pandemic, there was more opportunities to do things more virtually. And one of the things that I found myself doing a lot of was talking to showrunners. And for some reason, I just felt that I had a connection that worked, and the way that I conducted my questions, the way that I would put out the content out there, it obviously spoke to people. It was able to let me find something that I didn't know was that interesting to me. I love talking to anyone who works on TV and film, whether it's a director, an actor, or a writer, or a producer, or a showrunner, you name it. So I started, and at that point in August 2022, I had done a lot of interviews with showrunners at that point, and I started thinking, what if my next big focus is some kind of industry podcast? Because at that point I started listening to a couple. I've been listening to various podcasts over the last 5-8 years, that including people who work in various areas of Hollywood, and really open up more about how this industry really works. Now, I want to add this for context. Besides my role as an entertainment journalist, as a podcast host, editor, and interviewer, I don't work in TV and film. I have never made a TV show or a movie. I've never written for TV and film, but I have gotten the opportunity to connect with so many creators and creatives within this landscape. And so I have a little bit of an understanding of how some of these things are made. And that doesn't mean I know everything. I'm not at 100%, but I found a way where I love discovering more about how these things that they put into paper becomes reality. How these worlds come to life on our big screens or our small screens. So I started wondering, if I do an industry podcast, what would be a good focus? What would be a good premise? And I started really brainstorming the idea of, well, what if I did this as a spotlight for showrunners? Because I know that as someone who covers television on a regular basis all the time, I know there's always questions that I have thoughts about, like why they make certain decisions, or how much power does a showrunner have, and how much can the writers' room impact the studios and networks of what they want to tell with their stories. So as I was redeveloping the Marvel report into Multiverse of Color, now several months before this announcement was even made last year, I knew that with Multiverse of Color, I wanted to also start opening up the opportunity of doing exclusive podcasts or exclusive type of products within this brand. Because for those who also don't know me, besides hosting the Flash podcast, I'm also the network director and producer of something called DC TV Podcast, which is a podcasting network that has been operating since 2015, where we have created and launched multiple podcasts dedicated to all the Arrow shows, the DC shows on HBO Max / Max now, and Netflix. And when Multiverse of Color was officially launched of this rebrand, DC Podcast was basically folded in. Now, basically think of DC Podcast and Multiverse of Color as Disney and Marvel. Disney is obviously Multiverse of Color, where Marvel Studios, aka DC Podcast in this case, is underneath Disney Studios. So I have created and launched over 20 podcasts and brought in some amazing hosts and creators who have covered these television shows absolutely flawlessly. But I knew that I also want to tackle other types of podcasting experiences. And as I was working on Multiverse of Color, I started basically putting this idea of the Showrunner Whisperer into early development of, okay, I want to take all the great lessons that I have learned and gained from my 10 years of podcasting for Flash Podcast and DC Podcast, and bring them with me onto the Showrunner Whisperer, but also the things that I didn't do right with my past podcasts. I now want to do it right. I want to learn it. I want to really launch something that is special and new, that can also stand out in this large, ever-growing podcasting community, because podcasting is bigger than ever. When the pandemic struck the world, I felt that was really when podcasts started coming to life more and more and more. Like now everyone has a podcast basically. So it's sometimes a little hard to stand out. The Showrunner Whisperer also the name of it kind of started as a little joke between me and one of my best friends who I've known for over 20 years, because he would always make something that I'm also a little bit known for, is that through the Flash podcast, I've basically become the destination for where all Flash fans can usually get like their big interviews with the Flash showrunner Eric Wallace, who I've known for several years now, and because he would reveal a lot of things to me when I would interview him. So my friend was basically saying like you're basically like the Eric Wallace Whisperer, and then we had this conversation about this new podcast, and I was kind of jokingly testing him to see what would you think of the Showrunner Whisperer, and he kind of like nodded, and then looked at me to see what I was thinking, and I dug it. I've been recording several episodes now since the end of, I think, late December last year. Because the thing was, as I was developing Multiverse of Color and the Showrunner Whisperer at the same time, we got into March 2023, and then 2 months later, the Writers Guild of America strike happened. So as you can tell, the podcast wasn't able to launch back then because the writers were on strike, and rightfully so, because they deserve to get freaking paid what they deserve and the rights that they deserve. So, but that also allowed me to continue developing the podcast that I've been doing throughout 2022, because with this, I've been, like, for example, one of the big things I've done for myself is I've added a huge element that I don't know if a lot of podcasters do, but because I'm so inspired by television, I looked at the concept of a show Bible, but doing this as a podcast Bible, of really setting some good foundational rules for the Showrunner Whisperer that I want to adhere to, and that will always be the driving force of this show. So that's kind of basically how this came to be. And I've been, again, working with some great people behind the scenes. Julian Bell, who he's a freaking king, who he designed the logo, and he's doing a lot of media things for the podcast. The theme song that you heard at the beginning and the one you will hear at the end was done by my longtime collaborator and good friend Mike Schmidt, who has created some of the most iconic podcast themes for DC podcasts. And throughout with Multiverse of Color now, I feel ready to really have this be our first original podcast where, again, I want there to be different types of content coming out from our website, and this is going to be one of them. And the premise of the Showrunner Whisperer is to get a better understanding for what this job means. What type of power does a showrunner have, and what power do they not have? How much control can they have in a writer's room but also then when they're working together with the respective studios and network heads of figuring out stuff like budget, or if, for example, with comic book shows, like what characters can they use and what characters can they not use from the comic books, and also how they got to this position. How did they get to the job of a showrunner? Did they start as staff writers that have to build themselves up, or how did this come to be? And those are things that I've had a great opportunity to really get to talk to with the guests that I've already had on. We've recorded over 10 episodes at this point, and episode 1 will be dropping on Wednesday, March 20th. So you won't have to wait for too long, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited for all of us together to get a new perspective that we maybe don't hear often in interviews, because sometimes when you do interviews through ongoing shows, for example, it is a little trickier because you only maybe get 10 or 20 minutes. But with this, these are at least 1 hour long episodes. Some of them are even longer, where we get, we really get to go through their origin stories and how they landed in the world of Hollywood and how the strikes impacted where they are now. There's a lot of those stories in some of these interviews that you're going to be listening to over the next couple of months. And for me, what I'm also really excited about is, some of the untold stories of concept ideas and story ideas that maybe never came to fruition, that we never got to see on screen, that they were contemplating, but they couldn't make happen for various reasons. I think a lot of them are going to intrigue people, they're going to excite people, maybe disappoint people, but I'm excited to see where this is going to go. And I worked really, again, I've never worked on a podcast for this long before launching it, but this is really my next new passion project, and I'm hoping that many of you will be joining us on this journey. And for right now, for the time being, we're going to be releasing episodes bi-weekly, so essentially 2 episodes a month. That could change, where we have episodes maybe every week. We're gonna start this like this for now. And for all the technical information, you can find Showrunner Whisperer right here on Multiverse of Color and multiverseofcolor.com, but you can also find it at showrunnerwhisperer.com. We're all over social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Showrunner Whisperer, on Twitter at Showrunner Talk, because, well, let's face it, Elon Musk won't let us increase our handles. You would think that if you pay for Twitter Blue, whatever they're calling it these days, you would at least be able to add another letter or two in your handle, but I guess that's not the case. And we're also on TikTok, where we will have certain clips, because that is really doing well these days. That was something that did not exist back when the Flash podcast was started. TikTok and all those, this short form of media, they didn't really exist back then. And we're going to have these episodes up on YouTube. So go and subscribe to the Multiverse of Color YouTube channel. All of these links will be provided in the show notes below. So don't worry. You don't have to memorize it. You can just click down below. And you can also find the Showrunner Whisperer on any platform where you listen to your podcast at. So that will also be available in the show notes down below. And yes, I think this kind of sums it up in a nice little bow. I am excited for you to hear episode 1 and to give you a little tease of who is coming up. Because I kind of want to build up the anticipation. But I will say this for people who have followed my career for a very long time, because, I owe a lot of gratitude to the Arrowverse franchise, for the people who work on the show, for the people who watch these shows that really got me to where I am today. So I can happily reveal that there's a lot of showrunners from the Arrowverse that you'll be hearing in these first couple of episodes. But I want to make this perfectly clear. This is not a podcast just dedicated to just superhero shows. This will be about all sorts of television. So, I want everyone who, if you like a comedy or action or thriller or drama or animated shows, like, this is the show for you. This is the show for you. And I'm also excited for people who work in Hollywood to hear these stories and kind of hear, what has the showrunner of one of my favorite TV shows gone through and how did they get where they are today? So there's a lot of those fun things that we will get to explore, and also, some of the challenging things. And I've heard some really heartbreaking stories, but also seen how they've come out on the other end that I hope you guys will respond well to and see how everyone gets to where they are. And yeah, so like I said, March 20th is when the first episode will drop. Make sure you go subscribe to all the platforms. And, if you want to give us some support already, you can hit up us on some lovely reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcast at. As, the algorithm will definitely appreciate it, because we want as many people to discover the Showrunner Whisperer and join us on this new adventure from Multiverse of Color. So also, because I know there's going to be stories that will get shared through this new show that I know will likely get the attention of various websites and outlets and publications and so on. And all I ask for is that if there's something that you're reporting from us here on the Showrunner Whisperer, all I ask is just, source us back. Would appreciate a link back to the episode where you heard said story or quote that fascinated you, because that's a good way to help support the podcast, and that's can hopefully open up the door for more opportunities with the Showrunner Whisperer. So, and also it's just the right thing to do. Don't screen cap or screen record. Just, if you're reporting on whatever it is that you're hearing on the show, just add a link back. It's not that hard. It's very simple. And it's also just common courtesy, because that's what I want to do when I'm reporting other people's exclusives or stories. So would be greatly appreciated. I want to also thank everyone who has supported Multiverse of Color for our first year. We are just getting started. We have so much more fun stuff coming up this year and beyond. But thank you for having been there for us for our first year under this new rebrand. For anyone who's followed us since the mall report and are still with us, you rock. God bless you. And I'm excited for what's to come. So with that said, you can find me at Andy Behbakht on all the social medias, and find me over at Screen Rant, the Flash podcast, and Multiverse of Color, and also, of course, here on the Showrunner Whisperer. Thank you so much for tuning in for this little announcement launch episode, and we will see you soon on the Showrunner Whisperer.